There is a woman in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, who is 71 years old, has raised 8 children, has never once purchased a jar of anti-aging cream, and whose skin, by every observable measure, looks 15 years younger than her age. She is not a model. She is not an exception among her community. She is, by Amish standards, completely ordinary. That is the part that should stop you for a moment. Because if this were one woman, you could call it genetics and move on. But when you find the same result repeated across generations, across households, across two entirely separate communities, Lancaster County in Pennsylvania and Holmes County in Ohio, something else is going on, and that something else costs about $3. It has been sitting in American pantries for over 200 years, and the beauty industry has spent decades making sure you never thought to use it on your face. Before we go any further, I want you to know that the methods I'm sharing in this video are inspired by traditional practices of Old Order Amish communities, primarily in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and in Holmes County, Ohio. I have no affiliation with any product company, and nothing I tell you today requires you to spend money you do not have. Now, let me tell you what the ingredient is, and then let me tell you why the story around it matters just as much as the ingredient itself. Raw apple cider vinegar. Unfiltered, unpasteurized, with what the label calls the mother, that cloudy sediment at the bottom of the bottle that most people instinctively shake away or ignore. If you have a bottle in your kitchen right now, go look at it. The good ones have it. That living culture of bacteria and enzymes is precisely the part that has been quietly sidelined in commercial beauty formulations for the past several decades. And the reason for that is not complicated once you understand who profits from keeping your skin dependent on a 12-step routine. Amish women have used diluted apple cider vinegar as a facial rinse for generations. Not occasionally, not as a trend that comes and goes. As a fixed, unremarkable part of daily hygiene, the way you wash your hands or brush your teeth. It is so embedded in old order practice that many younger Amish women learned it from their grandmothers without ever being told why it worked. They were just told it worked. And generation after generation, it did. So what does it actually do to skin, and why does it matter more for women over 50 than for anyone else? Here's the basic biology. Kept simple. Human skin has a natural pH, a measure of how acidic or alkaline its surface is. Healthy skin sits somewhere around 4.5 to 5.5 on the pH scale, which is mildly acidic. That slight acidity is not an accident. It is your skin's first line of defense. It supports the bacterial balance on your skin's surface, it helps seal the outer layer of cells, and it slows the breakdown of the structural proteins, collagen, and elastin that keep skin firm. Now here is what happens after 50. Estrogen drops, and one of estrogen's lesser-known jobs is helping your skin maintain that acid mantle. When estrogen declines, skin pH drifts upward toward alkaline. That shift is slow, almost imperceptible, but its effects are not. Skin gets drier, the barrier weakens, inflammation becomes easier to trigger. And the enzymes that degrade collagen, which exist in all skin all the time, become more active in an alkaline environment. You are not imagining the acceleration. The biology is real. This is also why so many modern skincare products make things worse over time, even when they feel pleasant at first. The average bar soap has a pH between 9 and 10, which is extremely alkaline. Most foaming cleansers are similarly disruptive. Even many gentle or pH-balanced products marketed to mature women sit closer to 6 or 7, which sounds fine until you realize your skin needs to be below 5.5 to function correctly. Every time you cleanse with something that alkaline, you spend hours trying to recover a balance you had before you washed your face. Apple cider vinegar, diluted properly, has a pH of somewhere between 2 and 3 in its concentrated form. Diluted with water at a ratio of roughly 1 part vinegar to 5 or 6 parts water, it brings you directly into the range your skin actually needs. That is not a coincidence. That is chemistry. Now the history. Because this is where the story gets worth telling. Apple cider vinegar was listed in the United States Pharmacopoeia, the official reference for medicines and standards in this country, as a recognized medicinal agent in the 19th century. It was used topically and internally for everything from wound care to digestive complaints, and it was documented by physicians. By the early 20th century, its medical use was declining not because evidence contradicted it, but because the pharmaceutical industry was consolidating around synthetic compounds. There was simply more money in patentable chemistry than in fermented apples. In 1938, Congress passed the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which established the FDA as we know it. Under that framework, a substance that claims to change the structure or function of the body must be classified as a drug and go through an approval process that can cost hundreds of millions of dollars. A natural, unpatentable ingredient like apple cider vinegar could never survive that economics. You cannot own it. You cannot lock out competitors. So no one invests in the clinical trials that would allow it to make official claims. And without those claims, it cannot be formally marketed for what it actually does. That is not a conspiracy. That is regulatory economics. But the result is the same. The ingredient that Amish grandmothers have used on their faces for 200 years cannot legally be sold in a bottle with the words reduces fine lines and restores skin pH on the label. Meanwhile, a synthetic compound that mimics one function of a natural acid can be patented, studied, and sold for $65 at any department store counter. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as it was designed to work for the companies that can afford to use it. Now let me be direct about something, because you deserve the full picture. Apple cider vinegar does not reverse deep structural damage. If you have spent decades in the sun without protection, if you have significant photo damage, the kind that shows up as persistent brown spots, significant texture loss, or deep folds, this ingredient will not undo that. It does not go deep enough to repair collagen that has already broken down. What it does is stop the ongoing degradation, restore the surface environment that allows your skin to do its own repair work, and over 6 to 8 weeks of consistent use, meaningfully improve tone, texture, and the appearance of fine surface lines. It is maintenance and support, not reconstruction. Anyone who tells you a pantry ingredient will reverse decades of sun damage in 2 weeks is not informing you. They are selling you something. The proper method is straightforward. 1 part raw apple cider vinegar, the unfiltered kind with the mother, to 5 or 6 parts cool water. Applied with a cotton pad or a clean cloth after cleansing, left on the skin, not rinsed off, no toner. No additional step. The smell fades within a few minutes as it dries. That is it, done. Every evening. Total cost per month, somewhere between $2 and $4, depending on the brand and where you buy it. There is a woman I want to tell you about. She is 63, a retired school teacher from a small town just outside Strasburg, Pennsylvania, which sits in the heart of Lancaster County. She grew up with Amish neighbors, started using this method when she was in her late 40s after a neighbor's grandmother mentioned it to her, almost in passing while they were talking about gardens. She said she spent about $70 a month on skincare before that conversation and somewhere between $2 and $3 a month after it. When I asked her what the most noticeable change was, she did not say her wrinkles disappeared. She said her skin stopped feeling tight and reactive after washing. She said redness she had assumed was just her skin calmed within 3 weeks. She said she stopped dreading looking at herself in the morning. That is not nothing. That is the kind of thing that happens when you stop fighting your skin's chemistry and start working with it. Now let me bring this back to the Amish. Because the cultural piece is not decorative, it actually explains something. Old order Amish communities do not adopt new products because a company tells them the new product is better. There is no advertising pressure in their lives. There is no influencer, no before and after photo, no limited time offer. What exists is community memory. What your grandmother used, your mother used. What your mother used, you use. A practice survives not because it was marketed, but because it worked well enough to be passed forward. That is a completely different filter than the one the rest of us are running. We keep buying what is new because we have been made to believe that newer is always more advanced. Amish women keep using what their great-grandmothers used because the evidence is in the faces they grew up looking at. That is an uncomfortable thing to sit with if you have spent real money on anti-aging skincare. I know that. I am not saying you were foolish. I am saying the system you were operating in was designed to keep you spending, not to keep you informed. There is a meaningful difference between those two things. The acetic acid in apple cider vinegar, the organic acid that gives it its pH, also has mild antimicrobial properties that have been documented in peer-reviewed studies. It does not behave the same way as a pharmaceutical-grade topical treatment, but for the low-grade chronic inflammation and surface bacterial imbalance that accelerates visible aging in postmenopausal skin, it does something. Something real, something measurable if you pay attention. Something Amish women have been measuring in the only lab that ever mattered, the mirror across time. The fermented enzymes and the naturally occurring alpha hydroxy acids in unfiltered vinegar also contribute gently to surface cell turnover. Think of alpha hydroxy acids as the active ingredients in expensive chemical exfoliant serums. The concentrations in diluted apple cider vinegar are far lower than in a clinical peel, which is actually the point: gentle daily support rather than periodic shock to the system. If you have sensitive skin or active rosacea, start with a higher dilution ratio, 1 part vinegar to 8 or 10 parts water, and watch how your skin responds over a week before adjusting. This is not a one-size-fits-all answer. Your skin has its own history, and you know it better than any video on the internet does. I want you to think about something before you close this video. You have probably read the ingredient labels on your current skincare products. You have probably noticed that the first few ingredients are mostly water and emulsifiers, that the active compounds are often listed near the bottom where concentrations are lowest, and that the words on the front of the package rarely match the chemistry inside. You already know something is off. You have been skeptical for a while. That skepticism is well-founded. It is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition from spending real money on real disappointments. The Amish are not anti-science. They are anti-unnecessary complexity. There is a difference. When something works simply, reliably, cheaply, across multiple generations, they keep it. When it does not, they discard it without sentimentality. That is not backward. That is evidence-based thinking without the marketing layer on top. Drop your state in the comments and tell me what you spend on anti-aging skincare every month. I am genuinely asking because the range I hear from women is extraordinary, and I think you would be surprised by what your number looks like compared to the $3 this takes. And if your grandmother used something that her mother had taught her, something that never came in a package with a celebrity on the front, I want to hear about it. Those stories matter. They are the record that no one else is keeping. If you are the kind of woman who believes real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit margin, you already know what to do with this channel. Next time, the Amish hair treatment the FDA attempted to classify as a drug-grade substance in 1978, and the reason that effort failed is a story about what happens when an industry realizes it cannot own something it cannot explain.